Hey there! Hello, it's me, Cody, and I will be your news captain. All aboard the news cruise. Toot toot! Let's head out on this news adventure. Set a course for news. Okay, so today again I'm going to talk to you about the COVID-19 pandemic. Hopefully by now everyone knows how serious it is, so I don't want to spend the whole time getting you lathered up into a panic, which is coincidentally my new shampoo brand, Cody's Panic Lather, for when you need to wash away the virus while screaming endlessly in the shower. Ha ha ha! Instead, today, I want to talk to you about two responses we could have to this pandemic. First is the response favored by most doctors, epidemiologists, and other groups with a bias towards keeping people alive. Then I'll talk about another response, the one favored by Trump, rich ghouls, stock market fetishists, and other groups with a bias towards, money printed with the blood of the innocents. Do we have a clip?
Oh, there's only one thing better than owning a vault full of cold, hard cash, and that's swimming in it. I love to dive around in it like a porpoise.
Tragically, Scrooge McDuck contracted COVID after rubbing all that disgusting germ-ridden money all over his body. He was also last spotted at CPAC. You get it? It's like CPAC for ducks. And at CPAC, you see, a bunch of rich Republicans got exposed to COVID, which is funny because they don't seem to be taking this very seriously at all. Like when Rand Paul literally went to the Senate's gym and swam in the pool while awaiting his COVID test results, which were positive, risking the health of every other senator, which is kind of a metaphor for how they don't care about how their actions are going to get a bunch of us regular Americans killed. And that's not funny. Sorry, it's not. I kind of ducked this up, huh? Eh? Ducked? Woo! Anyway, moving on. First, let's look at the keep as many people alive as possible response. One of the worst things we could assume is that the situation is hopeless. It's not. In fact, if we take measures now to reduce the amount of infections, we can save a huge number of lives. The Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy reports that an epidemiological model found that if nothing is done, we could be looking at 81% of the US population getting the disease, with over 2 million deaths. Now, this is the worst case scenario, where we all sit on our thumbs and do nothing. Though, actually, if we all just sort of sat on our thumbs at home and did nothing, it would help tremendously. But what I mean is, if we don't make any effort to control the spread of the virus, no social distancing, no shelter in place, no increase in protective gear, and so on. Here's the good news. Right now, 27 states have issued shelter in place orders to slow the spread of the virus, according to covidactnow.org. What this means is that in these states, the rate of transmission will be drastically lowered. Let's look at California, for example. No reason, not because I live here and I'm personally freaking out or anything. Just no other reason. Here's what the difference looks like between business as usual and the best case scenario of shutting down businesses, working from home, and shelter in place. That big red boner of death is the number of hospitalizations if we had done limited action. The black line represents hospital capacity. As you can see, we would be royally, epically, turbo f***ed if we had stuck our heads in the sand and pretended like nothing was wrong. But we didn't. You see that tiny sliver of a green line below the hospital capacity line? That's the best case scenario of 3 months of shelter in place, meaning we actually successfully keep people at home, out of crowds, allow people to work from home, and shut down non-essential businesses. Even in the worst possible projected scenario with shelter in place, assuming everything that could go wrong does go wrong, the hospitalization rate is still far, far lower than if we don't shelter in place. We're not helpless. We can actually smash that horrible graph boner down. And that represents hundreds of thousands of people being saved from hospitalization, and hundreds of thousands more people surviving in California alone. Anyway, I know that shelter in place is a lot harder than it sounds, especially for 3 months. And I know for a lot of people who work in essential jobs, they don't have the option of working from home. That makes it even more important for those of us who can social distance to take it seriously, to wash our hands, to try to keep ourselves and our neighbors safe. And I also know this is going to be a really difficult time financially for a lot of people who've been laid off. And I could go on a rant for, oh, how would you look at that forever? about how we shouldn't make people jump through hoops just to get unemployment insurance and give people more than 1,200 big ones to help them survive. And I think it's totally fair to be concerned about your livelihood during this time. But surely we can both take care of people's financial needs while still not forcing people to go back to work before it's safe to do so, right? I mean, we're the richest, swollest, most big-balled and massive ovaried country in the damn universe. We have enough firepower to blow up the sun. We can afford to cover workers for a few months to keep millions from dying, right? Yeah?
Ultimately, the goal is to ease the guidelines and open things up to very large sections of our country as we near the end of our historic battle with the invisible enemy. It'll go on for a while, but we win. We'll win. I said earlier today that I hope we can do this by Easter. I think that would be a great thing for our country, and we're all working very hard to make that a reality.
Oh, right, the ghouls. I forgot about the ghouls. And Dre. Anyway, Trump has been pushing for people to get back to work by Easter because, quote, I just thought it was a beautiful timeline, which, I feel like maybe our timeline should be based on what researchers are saying about what will actually save lives and not what feels beautiful. But what? I'm just some guy who listens to doctors. But it's not just Trump touting this idea of sending people back to work in just a couple of weeks, which again is just a bit shy of the 3 months we see in epidemiological models that predict better outcomes. The Federalist also posted an article claiming we should do controlled voluntary infection. You know, like a controlled burn, except instead of burning brush, we're killing people. The Spectator USA ran an article titled, Herd Immunity Might Still Be Crucial in the Fight Against Coronavirus, with the curious subheader, If there was a way to safely grant 2/3 of a society COVID-19 immunity, the pandemic would stop. And I agree. A thing would work if that thing magically fixed the problem. Spoilers, there is no way to safely infect 2/3 of the population with a disease with a mortality rate of at least 1%. You see, what herd immunity actually means is over 2 million dead. Because again, if we let the infection run its course with little to no intervention, we could be looking at anywhere from 70 to 80% of Americans infected. And even with an optimistic death rate of only about 1%, which would be higher when hospitals get overwhelmed, that means over 2 million will die if we just allow for herd immunity to happen to us. And it's weird that a term that typically refers to a group of animals that are often led to slaughter feels so ominous. But hey, millions of people dead. Is that so large a price to pay for the economy? I mean, don't worry, economy, okay? I'm willing to let millions of people die for you. In fact, I'd die for you.
And you know, Tucker, no one reached out to me and said, as a senior citizen, are you willing to take a chance on your survival in exchange for keeping the America that all America loves for your children and grandchildren? And if that's the exchange, I'm all in.
I would die for you, economy. Take my mortal flesh and absorb it into your sexy equations. You see, saving millions of lives has a cost. Money. And some of our brave leaders think that is too steep a price to pay.
And again, the cure, it's like this cure is worse than the problem. Again, many people, in my opinion, more people are going to die if we allow this to continue. We have to go back to work. Our people want to go back to work.
Look, they're just concerned about the real people here. Businesses. Americans for Prosperity, the Charles Koch-founded think tank, wants to get people back to work ASAP, no matter what those dumb medical researchers say. Rather than blanket shutdowns, the government should allow businesses to continue to adapt and innovate, to produce the goods and services Americans need, while continuing to do everything they can to protect the public health, said the chief executive of AFP, Emily Seidel. You see, they really really care about public health. So much so that in 2018, they lobbied the Trump administration to give the CDC an extra $1 billion in funding to protect the public health. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. What I meant to say is they lobbied the Trump administration to take away $1 billion in funding from the CDC. Because as we know, underfunding the CDC turned out great. But look, they have a point, all right? People need money to live, and if they can't work, they can't get a paycheck. I mean, we can't just print out trillions of dollars to help provide for people for a few months while we shelter from a deadly virus. That would be Wait. We can print out trillions of dollars, which we just did by buying bonds in the private market, which injects money into the capital markets, which businesses can borrow from. Oh, and hey, we just gave businesses $500 billion in extra, hey, here you go, champ, buy yourself something nice money, because they asked for it. So could we give workers money to live for the next few months? Yes. Would it potentially stall the economy a bit? Maybe. Would it save millions of people from dying? According to doctors, yes. But is it worth it? I mean, it's like millions of lives, some changes to the economy, millions of lives, some changes to the economy.
I'm in the danger zone. I would rather have my children stay home and all of us who are over 50 go in and keep this economy going and working. Even if we all get sick, I'd rather die than kill the country.
Well, the rich and powerful are very bravely saying they're willing to sacrifice human lives to save our economy. And by our economy, of course, I mean their stocks and businesses. And by save the economy, I mean maybe temporarily spare stock markets with an uncertain outlook on the future of the economy, given that it'll probably be impacted by millions being sick or dead. But hey, choosing to sacrifice your own life for the economy is very noble. I'm sure these wealthy people promoting this great sacrifice would be the first ones to offer up their own hospital beds, right? The first ones to take over a nurse's shift at the hospital, right? Just gonna pretend to look at these notes. See, they're asking the tough, selfless questions like, can we use our money to get a vaccine early? What? Wow! What? What? That doesn't sound like they're willing to put their lives on the line for the economy. It's almost as if they want everyone else to risk their lives to keep their stocks up while hoarding life-saving resources for themselves. That is a twist. In this exceedingly normal article titled, Can We Get a Vaccine Early? How the Rich Are Preparing for Coronavirus, the wealthy discuss how they are planning to use their stacks of cash to construct money fortresses full of medicine and use any extra money to stuff in their ears so they don't have to hear the coughing of sick people outside. One veteran hedge fund investor said, quote, I don't feel concerned at the moment. It's not near me right now. If people in the village have coronavirus, I'd get out of here. His plan? He'll fly to his private cabin in Idaho and seal himself off. Well, his family could join him if they so choose. That becomes a personal choice of theirs, he says. Mitchell Moss, professor of urban policy and planning at NYU, notes that this whole deadly epidemic is going to be devastating to the marriages of the elites. Moss commented, this is going to destroy the marriages of the rich. All these husbands and wives who travel will now have to spend time with the person they're married to. Yeah, I hope all those sick people laughing it up while not coughing, who are having a grand old time in our overflowing hospitals, pause to check their privilege and to feel sorry for these rich people whose marriages are now in jeopardy due to spending quality time together. While some wealthy people are taking advantage of the panic to score cheap flights to their chateaus in Italy, others, like Gwyneth Paltrow, are more fearful, flying en route to Paris in a designer $99 Urban Air mask. You see, she explains, she was already in a pretend movie, Contagion, where, for pretend, she got infected by a disease, so she definitely knows what it's like to go through an epidemic. Pretendingly.
Okay, let's get some help, Beth. Beth.
Sir, you have to go.
Let's get a liner.
I wonder why she doesn't just drink some of her $60 detox juice from her $80 rose quartz crystal-infused water bottle that she offers for sale on her Goop website. Huh. You'd think she'd have faith in her own products to keep her healthy, you know? As a totally honest and very well-informed health f***ing guru. F***ing weird. Look, guys, the super rich are just like us. They have to worry about the epidemic too. That's why they're chartering private jets to flee the country, getting in touch with their healthcare providers, and selling stores out of designer $35 hand sanitizer. It's not all bad though. Southern Jet, a private charter jet company, sent out a marketing email saying, "Avoid coronavirus by flying private. Request a quote today." See, when life gives you epidemics, make Epidemicade. Now, if you're surprised by the panicked, Hunger Games villain response of the wealthy, which, let's be honest, you are not. Back in 2018, there was an article warning us of how the super wealthy intended to respond to the event. Doug Rushkoff, a lecturer, media theorist, and writer on digital culture, wrote an article back in 2018 of his experience being invited to a resort to deliver a keynote speech to a bunch of investment bankers about the future of technology. Now, first of all, Rushkoff was surprised to learn his audience was just 5 super wealthy guys. And instead of listening to the speech he had prepared, they started peppering him with questions about the future. They warmed him up with questions about Bitcoin, and then got to their real concern. How to survive after the event. Now, what is the event? Well, the event, according to these wealthy guys, is the dystopia that occurs after the inevitable crisis. What Rushkoff writes was their euphemism for the environmental collapse, social unrest, nuclear explosion, unstoppable virus, or Mr. Robot hack that takes everything down. Now, were these powerful, reasonable, moderate, status quo-loving gentlemen worrying about how to bring all of society back to normal? That is, saving humans from total societal collapse? Nah. They're worried about saving their own skins by creating an army of shock collar wearing slave goons. Rushkoff writes, they knew armed guards would be required to protect their compounds from the angry mobs. But how would they pay the guards once money was worthless? What would stop the guards from choosing their own leader? The billionaires considered using special combination locks on the food supply that only they knew. Or making guards wear disciplinary collars of some kind in return for their survival. Or maybe building robots to serve as guards and workers if that technology could be developed in time. Yep. That's you know, I wish I could say I was shocked to hear that the super wealthy want to create an army of starved, enslaved, or maybe robotic guards to protect them from the angry mobs of the poor people that they'd screwed over. I wish I was surprised to hear that the people who fight so hard against things like providing healthcare to all, working on a Green New Deal to save the environment, or, you know, generally improving the lives of the many, actually do know that their actions will someday destroy the world, and that their concern is not about guilt they'll feel over killing millions, but how to desperately cling to their piles of riches even after society collapses. How to continue to suppress the masses even when their money has no value by shock collars or food vaults or robot armies. I wish I could say I was surprised to hear that these wealthy, reasonable moderates, these elites who promise us they're the rational solution to our problems, are actually just waiting to become immortant Joes, hoarding, oppressing, and brutalizing the common people until the bitter end. But I'm not. I'm not surprised. And I'm not surprised that this article in 2018 has actually become a reality now, with rich people f***ing off on their private jets to their chateaus, wearing their designer face masks. Chillingly, after meeting with these wealthy ghouls, Rushkoff concluded, quote, "For them, the future of technology is really about just one thing: escape." If you've wondered why the super wealthy seem so ambivalent about things like Medicare for all or saving our planet from climate destruction, urging us to not be so radical, urging patience and incremental change, while scolding us for not accepting the status quo. If you're wondering why they seem so cavalier about the fate of the planet, it's because they have an escape plan. They're standing next to the only emergency exit in a burning building that they set on fire, calling for us to calm down and stop panicking, because all our pained screams are giving them a migraine. And once they get out that door, they're locking it behind them, because the smell of our burning flesh is giving them a tummy ache. Now, maybe I'm biased, since I kind of don't want to live in a dystopia, but it seems like the real extremists are not the ones asking for universal health care or for workers to get sick leave so they don't have to risk death for money, or, any changes to our collision course with planetary ruin. But maybe the real extremists are the people talking about how to use food as currency and make soldiers wear shock collars after the event. But here's the real kicker. It won't work. Sure, maybe they'll continue to pump resources out of the planet until it's a withered husk, starve people of healthcare, and work them to literal death. But here's the thing, you rich fucking ghouls. Nature doesn't give a single shit about your net worth. Yes, your fancy air masks and access to private doctors and planes and hermetically sealed orbs will give you a leg up. Maybe you won't die as quickly as the rest of us poor slobs, but eventually, that little virus is gonna get ya. And unlike politicians, it can't be bought off. And even if you manage to buy your own private custom paint job respirators, your own private vaccines, if the rest of us get sick, without our labor and our money, how are you going to stay wealthy? How do you eat? How do you live on a shell of a planet? Who are you going to pay to maintain your orchards and wipe your asses if you let us all die off? COVID-19 isn't going to be the end of humanity. No, but if you learn nothing from this, what happens when we have the next pandemic? Or climate change? Or I don't know, the rate we're going, fucking aliens. Have you guys seen Tiger King? The aliens are already here, you guys.
Hey, Carol, it's a voice from your past.
And here's the thing, rich people. It turns out, if you build your society on the backs of workers and common people, you actually won't have that society anymore if they're gone. They're freaking out right now because it turns out their wealth means nothing without the labor and money of regular people. So, is their solution a long-term, positive change based on science, on compassion, and on logic to make sure that we set up our population to be safer, more well taken care of, so they can live healthy lives and survive, and hey, maybe even be happier? Is it to make sure we have sick leave so sick workers aren't forced to come to work and infect others? Is it to give us universal health care so people receive treatment so they won't die of preventable disease? Or is it to try to force people back to work, hoping that they'll be able to squeeze out just a little bit more labor before they die, even though this would cripple the economy in the long term, would kill millions, and only benefits a very short-term, short-sighted, and ultimately meaningless increase in stocks?
Think about how the world would be if you tried to quarantine everybody because of the generic type flu. Now, I'm not saying this is the generic type flu, but maybe we'd be just better off if we gave it to everybody, and then in a month it would be over, because the mortality rate of this probably isn't going to be any different if we did it that way than the long-term picture. But the difference is we're wreaking havoc on global and domestic economy.
It's the latter thing. Gotcha. Cool. Okay. Before I go, I want to end on a sort of serious note. I know this whole thing's been one long serious note, but here's the deal, all right? Let's get through this next section. It's going to be sad and emotional, but afterwards, I promise you, I'm going to put Maggie, my dog, on video here, and she's going to be adorable. Okay? We'll get through this next bit together. All right. I want to talk about what we need to learn from this pandemic, and it's illustrated by a sickening tragedy. In Los Angeles, a 17-year-old kid died very suddenly, days after being healthy. He tested positive for COVID-19. He may have died from complications of COVID-19, but he was taken off the list of official coronavirus deaths because there were, according to health officials, extenuating circumstances that pointed to an alternative diagnosis as well. But here's what we do know. He likely died because he lacked health insurance. When he initially started showing symptoms of a serious illness, he was denied care at an urgent care center because he didn't have insurance. As health investigators tried to determine whether he died due to COVID-19, due to complications of COVID-19, or an underlying illness, or whatever, it's about time we asked, does it really matter? He was 17 years old, previously healthy, denied treatment because he didn't have health insurance, and he died way too young. He could have been saved, but because he didn't have insurance, he wasn't. Morally speaking, does it matter whether it was COVID? Should we stop caring if it wasn't due to COVID? No, of course not. But right now, some politicians are trying to make this distinction.
And with all due respect to Medicare for all, you have a single-payer system in Italy. It doesn't work there. It has nothing to do with Medicare for all. That would not solve the problem at all. We can take care of that right now by making sure that no one has to pay for treatment, period, because of the crisis. No one has to pay for whatever drugs are needed, period, because of the crisis. No one has to pay for hospitalization because of the crisis, period. That is a national emergency, and that's how it's handled.
Political leaders are resisting people who are pushing the idea of Medicare for all, saying we need to respond to the pandemic, sure, but it's a stretch to demand Medicare for all, because it's unrelated to the disaster. That maybe we should aim to get treatment for everyone now for COVID, but in the future, that's going too far.
As you've been seeing, our healthcare system seems to be crumbling underneath this crisis. There is not enough. There's not enough support for the healthcare system. There's not enough support for the American people inside of the healthcare system. Are you now reconsidering your position when it comes to single-payer healthcare?
Single payer will not solve that at all. The thing that is needed is, for example, we have a whole number of hospitals that are being so stretched, including rural hospitals, they're going to need more financing. That doesn't come from a single payer system. That comes from the federal government stepping up and dealing with the concerns that they have.
But this 17-year-old's story is sadly not unique. So many people die because they're uninsured and don't get care. Why do their deaths only matter if they're related to COVID? If someone dies of COVID, or if someone dies of a preventable disease because they don't have health insurance, they are equally tragic. We should always care. It's not hopeless, and maybe that's why it's so frustrating. We can actually improve society. The situation isn't hopeless, and we can't act like it is, or allow politicians to act like it's out of their hands. I know that it's very sad, and it's scary, and it's infuriating, but the answer is not to despair. You can grieve, you can be angry, you can be sad, you can be anxious, but please don't despair. We will actually get through the coronavirus pandemic, and when we do, we need to keep fighting for people, fighting for their right to live healthy lives, and I think we'll be able to do it. And you know who else thinks so? Maggie does. Yes, she does. Thank you guys for sticking with me through that tough section. As promised, here is Maggie, who is a being of pure light and joy. Maggie, do you want to do the news for us? Do you want to do the news? Do some news.
Say please.
Speak. Do the news.
Down. Roll over. Good girl. Sit.
What's that? You love our audience? You want to poop on a billionaire's lawn and inside their mouth? Okay, cute. Good girl. Bye. Do your credits. Roll the credits. Hi everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. We have a podcast called Even More News. We've got a Patreon. We've got it all. We've got dogs. We've got you, and we've got each other. Oh. Yes, I know.